That phrase really hits differently after you sit through the most recent trilogy. Or maybe if you beat Ancestors: The Humankind Odyssey. But as much as I love that game, I doubt that's why you're here.
The hell are you doing out here? Nom, 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 nom.
The Planet of the Apes franchise has been around for over 60 years at this point, starting as a novel and quickly being adapted for screen about 5 years later. Throughout the decades, the popularity has waxed and waned, but there's always been a certain level of love kept for it. To date, we've gotten 9 films, 4 video games, several comics, a live-action TV show, and an animated show. So with a 10th film just around the corner, why don't we take some time to revisit the franchise and learn why it's become such a beloved property once again. Now, obviously, with that many films and media, you're going to have a lot of writers, directors, and visions. Since we're going to be talking about the recent films, I'm going to hone in on 2 of those directors. And no, one of those is not Tim Burton, because his Apes movie was not good. Also, I think it's time we stop pretending that he's such a great director, because he's just okay. He did maybe 4 good movies, and everything else was mid. I mean, Jesus Christ, have you gone back and watched Dark Shadows? Because that movie is rough. I'm sorry, we said we wouldn't talk about him, so let me get us back on track. Rupert Wyatt and Matt Reeves. You'll probably recognize Reeves more since his body of work is larger, and I'll certainly get to him in a moment. But both of these directors were the perfect choice for bringing the franchise to greater heights. Rupert Wyatt is lesser known of the pair, but that doesn't diminish his talent for writing and directing. He had only done 5 projects prior to this, all of which he both wrote and directed, which should really already show the level of trust that Fox placed in him. And while he didn't have a hand in writing for the first installment, his eye for directing is a big part of why the film took off the way it did. And side note, the only reason he didn't come back to handle the rest of the franchise is because he felt he wasn't given enough time to complete his version for it, since Fox wanted such a quick turnaround for the sequel. He actually went on to direct The Gambler with Mark Wahlberg, which I actually really loved, because Wahlberg is usually given pretty bland characters, but this role really let him stretch his legs, and I appreciate that. But anyway, it's been said that the story's central message, at least from the original book's text, is that human intelligence is not a fixed quality and can atrophy if taken for granted. And I appreciate that Wyatt clearly took that to heart in how he portrayed the origins for the Apes' ascension. Taking intelligence for granted is exactly what kicks off the entire chain of events. It's Will's disregarding all safety and protocol by not only raising Caesar in secret, but also giving his dad a highly experimental drug that hasn't been used on humans yet. And it's also Jacobs, who decides to forgive the fact that Will drugged his dad and decides to rush the drug testing process without regard for the risks. But what makes me rank Rise as my favorite of the 3 is the fact that this film not only delivers on the core message, but also gives us all the initial character building from Caesar that we would see throughout the rest of the films. The sense of community and family, the values and rewards of purpose and focus, the permission gesture we see, even tactics for battle. He also gets a lot of experience on how dynamic humans can be. Will shows him love, affection, and compassion. The Sanctuary Keeper shows the level of apathy humans can have. One of the sons shows the level of cruelty humans can have. And the other son shows that even though some humans can be complicit, they can still feel guilty and show compassion.
You guys close.
What about him?
I don't know. It might cause problems with the other apes.
It goes to show why he's so patient with a lot of the other apes, especially Koba. It's not just the fact that he's the most advanced of the group. He knows that the others have only seen the worst side of humanity, but he knows that humanity has a lot of good in them and shouldn't be treated with immediate hostility at every turn. Another small yet wonderful addition to the film is the fact that you don't see the sign language subtitles until Caesar speaks with another ape. Whenever he speaks with Will, you have to go based on Will's response alone. Not only do we get a great basis for Caesar, but also the rest of his crew that we'll go on to see as well. Now, unfortunately, Buck doesn't make it to the end of this film. but he should already serve as a wonderful example of Caesar's leadership and how he can inspire others. One of Caesar's first moves is to free Buck from his cage within a cage and allow him a certain level of freedom. He remains by Caesar's side nearly constantly and sacrifices himself to protect Caesar and the others. It's the first of Caesar's people to die in his arms, and you can see it visibly crush him. Rocket starts as a bully, but once he's outsmarted by Caesar and given intelligence, he falls in line immediately. Caesar has Rocket be the one to hand out cookies, not just because apes together is strong, but because he still shows respect to Rocket for his status as previous leader. That respect goes a hell of a long way in this trilogy. When the clan starts to quarrel about what to do of the humans in the second film, Rocket stays firmly on Caesar's side despite the fact that his son was shot only moments ago. During the bridge battle, it's Rocket who leads the main assault straight at the cops, while Koba is tasked with climbing up the bridge and Maurice is tasked with climbing beneath it. Maurice serves not only as a friend and moral compass for Caesar, but as one of the main teachers for the new generation of apes. He stays loyal to Caesar during the ape schism, and goes with Caesar to find the Colonel in the third film. He also gets one of the best and most heartbreaking moments when he finally speaks verbally to Caesar at the end of the third film.
Son will know who was father and what Caesar did for us.
Not to mention, he's the one who cares the most for Nova and treats her as one of their own, just as Caesar has always taught others to do. Rocket, Maurice, and Caesar's relationship is the most stable thing in the whole trilogy when you think about it. It culminates in their brief conversation before they start their journey in the third film.
I may not make it back.
Which happens. Rocket helps throughout the trip, and Maurice stays by Caesar's side the entire journey back. Koba is the most complicated relationship within the group, and obviously he's the reason things escalated the way they did. But up until he attempts to perforate Caesar like the Senate did to Julius, you can really sympathize and relate to him. He had been tortured for years in various labs, and was freed like the others. He starts out following Caesar, to which Caesar realizes and respects him enough to let Koba be the one to decide Jacob's fate at the bridge. He saves Caesar and his son when the bear attacks them, and when the humans first reappear, Koba's actually level-headed and makes a solid argument. Maybe it's just because I recently did an X-Men episode and that franchise is still in my brain, but Koba and Caesar kind of reminded me of Xavier and Magneto. Two friends who care for each other but who see war brewing and want to handle it different ways, leading one to try to kill the other. Now, yes, Rise may be my favorite, but Dawn and War are still really fantastic and have some great things about them, and I credit a lot of that to Matt Reeves. For those of you not in the know, Matt Reeves is another writer-director who's given us the first installment in the Cloverfield series, Let Me In, and The Batman, something I've covered on the channel, you should go check that out. He has a fantastic eye for scenes and understands how to make the most of his shots. Not only that, he has an amazing level of creativity and attention to lore building that really made the second and third installment really kick off. He makes a great comment during his interview with Wyatt UK.
I would start not in the post-apocalyptic world, which I think feels a little familiar, but in the ape world creation that I don't think we ever have quite seen, because that would be a way to do a Planet of the Apes movie that is in a space that we've never quite explored before.
While the central focus in the second film is about how the apes decide to respond to the human colony and vice versa, I personally think everything around that is far more interesting. Dawn does a great job at doing rapid exposition during the opening title, so it's not jarring that we go from apes just starting to be free to them having an entire colony established. And Maurice's comment about not seeing any humans for the past 2 years only helps to sell the apes and audience's amazement at coming across humans a few moments later. But it also gives us a lot to ponder in terms of what the past few years must have looked like for all the humans who've managed to survive up until this point. We also see larger gorillas being used as ammo carriers, much like they would be used by the military in the third film. And not to mention, there is a fantastic mural wall in the center of the village that tells of their escape and lists the main societal rules. Reeves made another comment later in his Wyatt interview, which speaks volumes about how he would go on to handle the third film.
There are also these stories where your point of attack comes in where you know the ending of the story. And when that happens, it changes the whole focus of what that story is about, because it no longer becomes about the narrative of what happened. It starts becoming about the narrative of, well, how do we get there? And why does that happen? The story becomes all about those little decisions. You end up doing what is essentially a spectacle summer tentpole movie that's actually a character drama.
Though the third installment has an opening battle scene and a really bombastic ending sequence, at its heart, the film is a contemplative road movie piece about survival, clinging to hope, and turning into the thing you swore you'd never be. Caesar and his clan are finding themselves in increasingly stressful situations, and Caesar is giving into his rage, and he only makes it as far as he does because of his friends. We also get a fun juxtaposition from the human viewpoint. We get the Colonel and his fanatics showing the darker side of humanity, but we also get the pure, innocent side of things with Nova. She's hit with the mutated virus, but she's taken in by Maurice, and in the end she's living amongst the clan, showing that such things are possible despite all the barriers. Now, that coupled with Caesar's legacy ultimately being about a mixed tale of love and vengeance really helps to set the stage for the upcoming film. When you realize that Caesar wasn't a hero to all apes, and that the trilogy ends with no real strong leader to carry on Caesar's way of rule, it really shouldn't be a surprise that we're now going to be seeing apes being ruled with an iron fist. Even more than speaking on the dangers of allowing intelligence to atrophy, the trilogy does a remarkable job at the theme of hope and its consequences. Caesar's hope for the future, Will's hope for the cure, Malcolm's hope for peace, the Colonel's hope to stem the tide of the mutated disease, all of these things snowball into the tragic events that we see unfold. So that's my take. Now, I know there were a couple of things that I didn't end up touching upon, such as the utterly mind-blowing CGI effects that were used throughout the trilogy, or the performances of both the human cast as well as the motion capture cast. But that's because there's already like 8,000 videos out that are sucking their collective dicks in terms of the cast, and if I just talk about the CGI, I'm just going to end up ranting, and I don't want to bloviate more than I've already done. But if you'd like to speak about it, we can certainly do so in the comments. But again, that's my take. I really hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you back for more.